I stood in my workshop, running my hand across the smooth surface of a custom dining table I had just finished. The smell of fresh walnut filled the air. This space, these tools, this business. I had worked 3 jobs for 2 years straight to build. I slept 4 hours a night. I sacrificed weekends. I bled for this. I thought my family would be proud. Instead, they saw a bank account they could drain. What started with small favors turned into demands that nearly destroyed everything I built. Before I tell you how I went from being the family ATM to cutting them off completely, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. If you have ever felt used by people you love, hit that like button. And subscribe, because this story has a twist ending nobody saw coming, especially my family. I grew up in the suburbs of Cleveland, Ohio, in a working-class neighborhood where everyone knew everyone. My biological father left when I was 5 years old. I barely remember him. Just fragments. A voice. The smell of cigarette smoke. The sound of the front door closing for the last time. My mother Diane remarried when I was 12. Roger became my stepfather. He was a quiet man who worked at a manufacturing plant and spent his evenings in front of the television. Our household always struggled with money, but not because opportunities were absent. It was the decisions, the impulse purchases, the inability to save. My older brother Brandon was 4 years older than me, and from the time I could form memories, I watched him get bailed out of every mess he created. Crashed a car Mom paid for repairs. Got fired for showing up late. Roger called in favors to get him another job. Racked up credit card debt buying things he could not afford. The family had a fundraiser dinner to help him out. I learned early that I was different. Nobody was going to bail me out. At 16, I got my first real job washing dishes at a local diner. I saved every dollar I could. While Brandon got the new gaming console for Christmas, I got socks and a card. I was not bitter. I understood the dynamic. I just knew I had to rely on myself. The one person who believed in me was my grandfather on my mother's side. He was a carpenter, a craftsman who could turn a piece of raw lumber into something beautiful. He had a small workshop in his garage, and during summer breaks I would spend hours there with him. He taught me how to measure twice and cut once, how to read the grain of wood, how to respect the materials and the tools. When he passed away during my senior year of high school, he left me his collection of hand tools. They were old, some of them rusty, but they were mine. That box of tools became my most valuable possession. After high school, college was not an option. My family could not afford it, and honestly, nobody encouraged me to go. Brandon had dropped out of community college after 1 semester, so the expectation was low. I got a job at a furniture store, starting in the warehouse, and eventually moving to the sales floor. I watched the craftsmen who came in to repair damaged pieces. I asked questions. I learned. At night, I went to the public library and checked out books on woodworking and furniture design. I watched countless hours of tutorials online, taking notes in a battered notebook. By the time I turned 23, I had a plan. I was going to start my own custom furniture business. People laughed. My family laughed. Brandon told me I should stop pretending to be a businessman and get a real job. Diane said it was a waste of time. Roger just shrugged. Their doubt fueled me. I worked 3 jobs to make it happen. Morning warehouse shifts, evening bartending, weekend carpentry projects for anyone who would hire me. I slept 4 hours a night if I was lucky. For 2 years, this was my life. No social life, no dating, no vacations. Just work and the dream of building something that was mine. My first real client was a local coffee shop that needed custom tables. The owner had seen a small bookshelf I had built for a mutual friend. He took a chance on me. I delivered 6 tables in 3 weeks. He loved them. Word spread. A restaurant downtown hired me for booth seating. An office building needed reception desks. Slowly, steadily, the work came. After 3 years of grinding, I was able to quit my other jobs and focus full-time on the business. I rented a small workshop space. I hired an assistant, a young guy fresh out of trade school who reminded me of myself. I named the business Scott & Sons Woodworks, a tribute to my grandfather, even though I did not have sons of my own. It felt right. It felt like honoring the man who gave me the foundation. By my 4th year in business, revenue crossed 6 figures. I was not rich, but I was stable. I was proud. I had built something real from nothing but determination and sawdust. That is when my phone started ringing. But it was not congratulations they were calling for. The first call came from Brandon. We had barely spoken in 3 years. He had his life. I had mine. But one Tuesday afternoon, his name lit up my phone screen. The conversation started friendly enough. He asked how I was doing, complimented the business, said he had heard good things. Then came the shift in his tone. He was in a tough spot. Just needed $500 to cover rent. He would pay me back in 2 weeks. Guaranteed. I hesitated. $500 was not a small amount, but he was my brother. Family. I transferred the money that same day. 2 weeks passed. No money. No thank you text. Nothing. When I finally reached out to ask about it, his response was irritated. "Come on, we are family. Do not be like that." A month later, my phone buzzed with a text from Linda, my older sister. She was 35 with 3 kids and a husband who worked construction. The message was long. Her oldest son needed tuition assistance for a private school. They were struggling. Could I loan her $1,200? She promised to pay me back in monthly installments. I thought about my nephew. He was a good kid. I agreed. Linda paid the first installment of $100. Then silence. When I asked about the next payment, she became defensive. She had 3 kids. I was single with no responsibilities. This should be easy for me. The pattern emerged quickly after that. Kevin, my younger cousin, texted asking for $300 for car repairs. Diane called about medical bills. Could I help with $1,000? Roger needed $2,000 for a business idea he wanted to pursue. Every time I helped, the money vanished into a black hole. No repayment. No gratitude that lasted beyond the initial transaction. They began to expect it. The requests increased in frequency and amount. When Brandon called again asking for $1,000 for a job training course, I said no. His reaction was immediate and angry. "So now you are too good for your own brother." I tried to explain that I had already lent him money he never repaid. He hung up on me. 2 weeks later, Diane called. She wanted me to come over for a family dinner. "We miss you," she said. It had been a while since we all got together. I should have known better. When I arrived at her house that Sunday evening, I realized immediately this was not a casual dinner. Everyone was there. Brandon, Linda and her husband, Kevin, Roger. They were all seated around the dining room table, and there was an empty chair waiting for me. I sat down. The food was already on the table, but nobody was eating. Diane folded her hands and looked at me with an expression I could not quite read. "Scott, we need to talk about your attitude." My stomach dropped. This was an ambush. For the next 30 minutes they took turns. I had changed. I forgot where I came from. I was acting like I was better than everyone else. Linda leaned forward, her voice taking on a lecturing tone. "Family helps family. That is how we were raised." Brandon crossed his arms. "You act like you are better than us now, just because you have some money." Then came the proposal. They had discussed it before I arrived. I should contribute to a family fund, $2,000 a month. It would help everyone. It was only fair since I was doing well. I sat there stunned. $2,000 a month. $24,000 a year. To people who had never supported my business, never believed in me, and never repaid a single dollar I had already given them. I said no. The room went silent. Diane's face flushed. "After everything we did for you, I felt anger rising in my chest. What exactly did you do for me? You told me my business would fail. You laughed at my dreams. You never once asked how I was doing until I had money." Brandon slammed his hand on the table. "We are your family. You owe us." I stood up. "I do not owe you anything. I built this myself. You want to talk about family. Where were you when I was working 3 jobs and sleeping in my car between shifts? Where were you when I had to choose between buying materials and buying food? I was alone then. I am fine being alone now. I walked out. I drove home with my hands shaking on the wheel. The people who were supposed to be proud of me had turned into strangers demanding a cut of my success. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word. The realization settled over me like a heavy blanket. This was not love. This was exploitation. 2 weeks passed. I thought maybe they would cool off. Maybe we could find some middle ground. I was wrong. On a Thursday afternoon, Brandon and Linda showed up at my workshop unannounced. I was in the middle of sanding a cabinet door when I heard the knock. I wiped my hands and opened the door. They did not smile. They did not greet me. They just walked in like they owned the place. Brandon got straight to the point. They needed $15,000. Linda was pregnant with her 4th child and needed help with expenses. Brandon had been evicted from his apartment and needed a security deposit for a new place. $15,000. I stared at them. Are you serious? Completely serious, Linda said. Her hand rested on her belly. This is Family Scott. I took a deep breath. No. I cannot keep doing this. Brandon stepped closer. Cannot or will not. There is a difference. I held my ground. Both. You have never paid back a single dollar I lent you. Not one. And now you want $15,000. Linda started crying. So you are going to let your nephew be homeless. You are going to let my children suffer. I felt the guilt creeping in the old programming trying to take over. But I pushed it back. I worked for this. You want money. Work for it too. Brandon's face turned red. You selfish piece of work. You sit here in your fancy workshop with your expensive tools while your family struggles. What kind of person does that? The kind who refuses to be used anymore, I said. We are done, Brandon spat. He grabbed Linda's arm and they stormed out. The door slammed behind them. I stood there in the silent sawdust, still clinging to my shirt, and I knew something had broken that could not be repaired. Within a day, my phone exploded. Extended family members I had not heard from in years were calling. Family friends were reaching out. They had all been told the same story. Scott refuses to help his struggling family. Scott has money and will not share it. Scott turned his back on blood. Diane left a voicemail that was 5 minutes long. Her voice was thick with emotion. I raised you better than this. You are breaking my heart. How can you be so cold? The family group chat, which I was still part of, became a forum for discussing me as if I were not there. Messages flew back and forth. Some people forget their roots when they get a little success. Money changes people. I always knew Scott was selfish. Kevin posted on social media. Blood is supposed to be thicker than water, but I guess money is thickest of all. Old family friends unfriended me on Facebook. People I had known since childhood looked at me differently at the grocery store. I felt the isolation closing in. The guilt was suffocating. Maybe I was the villain they said I was. Maybe I was selfish. Maybe I should have just given them the money. But every time I started to second-guess myself, I remembered the dinner, the ambush, the demands, the complete lack of respect for what I had built. I made a decision. I drove to Diane's house one last time. I needed to face them, to say what needed to be said. When I arrived, Brandon, Linda, and Roger were already there. It felt planned, like they had been waiting for me. I walked into the living room. 4 pairs of eyes stared at me. I remained calm. I had rehearsed this. I am done being your ATM. I love you, but I will not let you use me anymore. Diane stood up. How can you say we are using you? We are family. I pulled out my phone. I had tracked every dollar. Over the past 18 months, you all have borrowed over $20,000 from me. Not $1 has been repaid. That is not borrowing. That is taking. Linda shook her head. We needed that money. And I needed support when I was building my business. Where were you? Silence filled the room. Where were you when I was struggling, When I was working myself to exhaustion, you were nowhere. But now that I am successful, I am suddenly the bad guy for not funding your lives." Brandon stood up. "Fine. If that is how you feel, do not expect us at your funeral." His words stung, but I did not back down. I am setting a boundary. If you cannot respect that, then we do not have a relationship. Not one based on anything real. I turned and walked out. I got in my car. Before I pulled away, I sent one final text to the group chat. "I am not doing this to hurt you. I am doing this to save myself. If you ever want a real relationship based on respect, not money, my door is open. But the bank is closed." Then I blocked their numbers. I left the group chats. I unfollowed them on social media. I created distance. The first few days were brutal. The guilt was overwhelming. I questioned everything. Was I wrong? Was I cruel? But slowly something else emerged. In the silence, I started to hear my own voice again. And that voice was telling me I had done the right thing. The first few weeks after cutting them off were some of the hardest of my life. I would wake up in the middle of the night, my mind racing. I looked at old family photos and felt a deep sense of loss. The holidays were approaching, and for the first time in my life, I had no invitations, no calls, no texts, asking what I was bringing to Thanksgiving dinner. I was alone. But in that loneliness, something unexpected happened. My business began to thrive in ways it never had before. Without the constant stress of phone calls demanding money. Without the guilt weighing on my chest every time I saw a family member's name on my screen, I could focus. Really focus. My creativity came back. My energy returned. I slept through the night for the first time in months. I landed a major contract with a high-end hotel chain. They wanted custom furniture for 15 locations across the Midwest. Beds, dressers, desks, nightstands. It was the biggest deal I had ever closed. I hired 3 more craftsmen. I expanded the workshop. Within 6 months, my revenue doubled. I finally understood what had been holding me back. It was not just the money they took. It was the emotional and mental drain, the constant obligation, the guilt that never let me enjoy my own success. I started investing in myself. I took advanced woodworking classes. I bought better equipment. I hired a marketing consultant to help grow the brand. I built real friendships with my clients, my employees, and other local business owners. These were people who respected my boundaries, who celebrated my wins without asking what was in it for them. Then, 6 months after I cut them off, I received an email. The sender was Brandon. The subject line read, "I am sorry." I stared at it for a long time before opening it. The email was long. He told me he had lost his apartment. He was couch surfing. His girlfriend had left him because of his financial irresponsibility. He had hit rock bottom. In that rock bottom, he was forced to face the consequences of his choices. "You were right," he wrote. "I was using you. We all were. I never respected what you built because I was jealous. I wanted what you had without doing the work. I do not expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know, I finally get it." He was not asking for money, just offering an apology. 2 months later, Linda called from a new number. I almost did not answer. Her voice was different, humble, genuine. She told me that my decision to cut them off had been a wake-up call. She and her husband had attended financial counseling. He had taken a second job. They were paying off their debts. Slowly, she wanted to pay me back even if it took years. "You taught me a hard lesson, but I needed it." Then a card arrived in the mail. No return address, so I could not block it. Inside was a handwritten note from Diane. She apologized. She admitted she had enabled Brandon's behavior for years. "I thought I was helping, but I was hurting. I did the same to you." She said she was proud of me, proud of my success, proud of my boundaries. I did not rush to reconcile. I was not ready to just let them back in. I replied to Brandon's email acknowledging his apology and encouraging his progress, but I was clear. I need to see consistent change, not just words. I told Linda I appreciated her accountability, but we needed to take things slow. I sent Diane a card back with a short note. Thank you for understanding. Let us take this one day at a time. A year passed. Brandon and I started meeting for coffee occasionally. The relationship was different. We talked as equals. He had a stable job. He had his own apartment. He was paying his own bills. We never talked about money. Linda sent me $50 a month. It was not much, but the principle mattered more than the amount. She was showing me she understood. Diane and I texted sometimes. Surface-level conversations, but they were civil, respectful. Kevin and Roger never apologized. They never reached out, and I was okay with that. Not everyone will understand boundaries. Not everyone will respect them, and that is fine. I do not need everyone in my life. I need the right people. Today my business is hitting 7 figures in annual revenue. I opened a second showroom. I was recently featured in a regional magazine as one of the top young entrepreneurs in the state. But the thing I am most proud of is not the money. It is not the recognition. It is the fact that I learned how to say no. I learned that family does not mean unconditional access to my resources. I learned that love without boundaries is not love. It is enabling. The best gift I gave my family was holding them accountable. Some of them rose to the challenge. Some did not, but that was their choice to make. I help people differently now. I mentor young woodworkers who remind me of myself. I donate equipment to trade schools. I give opportunities, not handouts. I learned that helping someone grow is different from keeping them dependent. Real help empowers. It does not enslave. I stood in my workshop this morning watching my team work on a custom conference table for a law firm downtown. The smell of fresh-cut oak filled the air. Sunlight streamed through the windows. I thought about the journey, from a broke kid with a box of old tools to this, a successful business owner, a man who learned to protect what he built. Cutting off my family was the hardest thing I ever did. But it taught me something crucial. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let people face their own consequences, because that is how they learn. That is how I learned. And that is how we all become who we are meant to be. Success is not just about building something from nothing. It is about protecting what you build even from the people you love. Especially from the people you love. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who did not respect your hard work? Drop your story in the comments below. I read every single one, and your experience might help someone else going through the same thing. If this story resonated with you, smash that like button. Subscribe to the channel so you do not miss future stories about real-life struggles and how people overcome them. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear that it is okay to protect yourself, even from family. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it gives you the courage to stand firm in your own boundaries. Remember, you are not selfish for protecting your peace. You are wise. Take care of yourself, and I will see you in the next one.